G'day guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, and it's episode 81 I believe. Sorry, I should have checked before I started, but of course we have a lot to talk about today. I have a little bit of talk about the commentary, looking at a bit of a lineup change going into the finals, the third week of finals of course. A couple of trade information news coming through, especially Dustin Martin, that's probably the big one coming out of the week, and Zach Merritt. Of course we'll be doing our tips for the prelim final as well, so let's roll the intro and get straight into it. And then Rankin from the pocket, don't tell me, Isaac Rankin!
Yeah.
He's just got the license for a brothel.
Well, I think Gather Round's going to be more than just AFL this next season.
It's at the handle at the back, Nick Dankos to get the pies home! He's done it! So guys, welcome back. Obviously, probably a first one if you are watching this on YouTube is the fact that we are in a new place to do the podcast. Not really much different. I mean, I don't think you guys will notice too much, but if you guys have any ideas of what to put in the background here, make sure to let me know, and we're going to try and work out the sound stuff. It may be a little bit echoey this episode, so I'll quickly just say that now, so I do apologise for that. But, of course, we'll just have a quick little recap of the games over the weekend. What a couple of games it was. Of course, Port Adelaide v Hawthorn and GWS v Brisbane, both basically upsets, I would say. Port Adelaide didn't go into that game really expected to win it all, and they came out and put absolutely immense pressure throughout the whole game against Hawthorn. It was a great game from them. Hawthorn, I think, did pretty well to stay close with them, though, so I don't think they deserve a lot of credit for their end. But, of course, that does bring us to the first story I want to take a look at, which is obviously Ken Hinkley did get fined $20,000 for his antics after the game, and I think that is ridiculous. Why is he giving $20,000 fine? That's crap, I think. I know some people will say, and this is me as well, I don't think he should have done it as a coach. I don't think that's fair enough. But they've given him the exact same fine for saying something like a little bit, basically banter on the end of the game. Now, it was banter at the end of the game. They've given him the same fine as Jason McCartney last week bumping a player. How is that fair? I mean, I'm not saying that Jason McCartney, I think it was probably, now obviously this is for the clubs, not for the people themselves, but obviously they are the ones at the forefront of it. So that's why I'm saying McCartney and Hinkley. But the fact is that McCartney, obviously it wasn't that big a deal. I'm not saying he bumped it. I mean, I'm not saying like it was a full-on bump, but he did stand in front of him and did make contact with the player. They're saying that's the exact same as Ken Hinkley standing there and shouting a couple of words across, considering Hawthorn have been talking a lot throughout the whole year. Now, you guys know, if you guys have seen the podcast, that I have not been opposed to the talk from players. I love it. I think it's great for personality in the game. But also, we've got to have personality in other ways as well. And if people are going to throw things out, then you've got to be expected that they're going to throw it back. That's how the game's been going this year. And Hawthorn have been throwing a lot, and that's great. But then when they've got to receive it, they do. And I'm not saying that... I think a couple of things that Hawthorn people said after the game I don't really like Sam Mitchell saying, oh, he's a 60-year-old man against a 20-year-old. It's like, no, there's a player, and it was a player making a bunch of stuff, and then a person who was, going back at them. I don't think age has really anything to do with it, but I do think a coach shouldn't be necessarily doing that at the end of the day. If it was a player, I'd be 100% on the side of who gives a fuck. And I don't think I'm still on the side of who gives a fuck, but it's also, I understand that why a coach shouldn't really be doing that. They should have a better example. But Ken always plays on the edge, and I don't mind that whatsoever. I think if they were going to give him a fine, I don't think they should have given him a fine to begin with, by the way. But if they were going to give him a sanction, it should have just been come out a public apology and just say, I am sorry for my actions. I was just standing up for my team, and at the end of the day, I am sorry to Jack Ginnivan for what I said. That's all that should have happened, and that's basically what he already did. So that's all it should have gone to. So to fine him $20,000, ridiculous, and that's really overshadowed the game itself. So, sorry, been a bit sick this week. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, I think the game was brilliant. It was a very high-pressure game. Port Adelaide brought the pressure. I'll be interested to see how they go next week. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But great play from Port Adelaide. It's really interesting as well, talking about it, because where was that pressure the week before against Geelong? You would have thought they would have been up for that game, and they just simply weren't. So now they've had to go the hard way round, and now they've got to go to Sydney and win over there. They've got a very good record against the Swans, so we'll see how that pans out. But great work from Port Adelaide. And on the Giants side... Sorry, Giants choke. Giant choke. Sorry, just giant choke. Giants absolutely choked that game. And I'm sorry to any Giants fans out there. I know I've got a couple in the comments, and I think everyone's on the same point that they have just choked a potential premiership because they were one of the favourites going in. Even, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, my brother said that they were the favourites going in to the premiership. He thought they were going to beat the Swans in week 1. Everyone had them beating Brisbane in week 2, and they obviously should have done it. Very big choke from the Giants. Brisbane scraped through. I'm very interested to see how they're going to back it up this week against the Cats. I don't think many people have them winning this game. I would personally love to see it because at least then it's a non-Victorian team grand final, no matter what happens. But end of the day, I think the Cats are primed right now. They had a very good win against Port Adelaide, and they've got a pretty good run now to go to the grand final because I think they were probably on the harder side of things, I would say. Going to have to go to Adelaide, they won that game, and now they don't have to play a team that was basically the informed team of the comp going into finals in the Giants. So Geelong have got a very good run, and they've always been primed for these sort of situations at the end of the year, so they're setting themselves up for a potential premiership, the Cats. And I don't think people had them going out in straight sets, but on that Giants game, Brisbane, they were very poor in the first half, but they stuck around and the Giants didn't put them away, and they did well enough to catch back. So you've got to give the Lions credit, and they're only one win away from being back up to the same spot they were last year. That would be a great way for the Lions to end their season if they could get back and potentially win the premiership. But let's move on. We've obviously talked about the Ken Hinkley stuff. Absolute joke in my opinion. But make sure to let me know down below. I'm actually interested to see what other people think. I think most people are on the side of coach shouldn't have done it, but it shouldn't have been fined. I think that's what a lot of people have been sitting at. But talking about the commentary stuff that I did mention at the start, great news. I think this is really good. I don't think it's going to be a commentating role. It says it's a hosting role, which is unfortunate. But good news all round is Bruce McAvaney is set to join 7AFL's broadcasts for key hosting role for the last 3 games of the season. Absolutely brilliant. I love this. I would like to see him commentate, but I don't think he's going to, from what this has been saying, a key hosting role. So I think he's just going to be on Fox Footy, like you say. They obviously just have Sarah Jones or Kelly Underwood or whoever it may be, like Gary Lyon. It looks like he's going to be doing that. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but I'm just happy to see that Bruce McAvaney's back. I think he's probably my GOAT of commentating. I think I mentioned it in the commentary video essay that I've talked about. He's my favourite, and I think it's really sad when he did retire in 2021, I believe. Was it? It was at the end of the 2020 season. I know that was his last game, I'm pretty sure. So it's really sad that he's not going to be commentating any of the games, but to see him back in commentary in the box will be good to see. I hope one day, in one of the games, he just shoves over one of the commentators like James Brayshaw and just kicks him out. He says, "Fuck off," and then just brings him in, and he just jumps in and just starts commentating. Like BT's saying something, he goes, "Fuck off! Oh, that was amazing!" That's what I want to see. Bruce McAvaney, karate kick someone in the head, and then he just jumps on the mic. That's what I want, but we'll have to see. I'm actually very interested to see how next year goes with the new media bargaining deal. So obviously, if you don't know, there's going to be a bunch of new commentators coming through next year. Obviously, new media stuff's already happened. They already announced that Kane Cornes will be moving to Channel 7. I think it's a really big get for them. I think that most people understand why Kane Cornes is doing it, mostly because he wants to be on game calling as well on TV, because obviously he doesn't do that with Channel 9 at the moment. But it's a massive get for Channel 7, because if you think about it, Channel 7 have what? Talking Footy on Thursday nights? I think that's still going. And then they've got... sorry, not Talking Footy, the Front Bar. They've got the Front Bar on Thursday night, and they've got Talking Footy. That's all they've got. And also, Channel 7 don't promote the Talking Footy at all. Like, if you think about it, I know there's probably a lot of you who watch this channel and probably see at least the clips of Channel 9 and Fox Footy promoting their TV shows. Channel 7 don't do that. They do a couple of reels and TikToks and shit like that. But the way to get it out there to people for watching and things like that, Channel 9, what they do, and you may not like Footy Classified, which is fair enough. I don't really like it either. But the thing is, Kane Cornes brings views to it. no one would watch Footy Classified or even the Sunday Footy Show without Kane Cornes there. So that's why Channel 7 have got him. I think it's a great get for them. And I don't necessarily like all the takes that Kane Cornes gets or takes, but I do understand that he's a very big get for a media channel, especially in footy nowadays. And he's very much got on the mantra of giving his opinion and not really caring what anyone says. And I would rather someone give their opinion and have a shit take than say absolutely nothing and be the most boring cunt on the planet. That's basically what I've set up. So I understand that's why Kane Cornes is probably not everyone's favourite, but also that's why he's got a big deal on Channel 7. And there'll be a big bunch of changes throughout like at the end of the year. I think that the Kane Cornes one got out a bit early. I'm surprised they made that one so quick. But I think towards November, October, we'll start seeing some changes and see what commentators are going to be on next year. So I know a lot of people have pointed out, they're doing the gender stuff and all that sort of stuff. And that's, whatever. I don't think there should be quotas on that sort of shit. I think it should just be who's the best for the job. Whether that be a man or a woman, I don't really give a shit. But yeah, I know most people have looked at that and be like, they're doing a woke crap. It's like, yeah, but let's be honest. I think everyone on Channel 7, people who watch Channel 7 would realise that it is fucking boring as fuck. So I think it does need to change. And they need to add more shows as well. So that's what I think needs to happen. Like, you look at Fox Footy, and obviously I know a lot of people, not everyone has Foxtel or KO or whatever, but you know that there's AFL 360 Monday to Thursday, every single day. They're all their shows. They've got On the Couch. They've got the midweek tackle. They've got another one that I can't remember, and they've obviously got the end of the week. What is it called? I'm not thinking bounce. I'm trying to think more football shows than comedy. Not that that's really comedy. I don't really like it, but I know my brother thinks it's decent. I'm like, it's just a bit cringe in my opinion. I'm trying to think of the other show. It's the one with Lee Montagna, David King, and Anthony Hudson at the end of the. I can't even remember it. That doesn't matter. But you guys know what I'm talking about. So Channel 7 have got none, and Channel 9 have got better shows. Well, not even better shows, but just like shows with people who are getting clicks, and that's really what they need now. The free-to-air channels, because no one's watching free-to-air anymore, really. Like, you only watch free-to-air to watch sport now, and most people really just pay for KO at this point. It's $25 a month. It's a bit expensive, I get it, but you get a lot better quality, even though KO can kind of suck sometimes. But you understand what I'm talking about. So that's why a big media deal is being done. That's why I think great from Bruce McAvaney to be back, just as at least as a hosting role. I wouldn't mind if that's a thing that he does, or even just does. I know he was, like, way back in the day. He used to do Channel 7 footy shows way back. So I'd like to see him maybe do that, potentially, because I think he's got a very good personality. So I think that would be good, but we'll have to wait and see on that front. But moving on, let's take a look at a couple of the trade rumours that have been floating around, because there's been some crazy ones over the last couple of days, let's be honest. Let's start with the first two, which are pretty out there, let's be honest. First one was Zach Merrett to St Kilda. There is no way in fuck that Zach Merrett is leaving to St Kilda. There is no way. I can't see it. There is no way. Now, I'm not talking about on Petrarca brand stuff right here, but there is no way that Zach Merrett is leaving for St Kilda of all teams. I'm sorry, St Kilda fans. This is a crap story that is going to go absolutely fucking nowhere. Now, I know some people will sit there and be like, we didn't think anything about Petrarca, and maybe there was a lot to that story. Yeah, but the way that they are portraying this is St Kilda have not even sent an official offer yet. They have been questioning Zach Merrett, and they've not even put a deal in front of him. So this is basically at the point where you're like, hey bro, have you ever thought of changing clubs? No. Well, we at St Kilda would like to have you. Yeah, but I'm playing at Essendon. Oh, okay, cool. So we would give you a Godfather offer. Yeah, I'm not leaving. That's basically where it's at this point. So to say that there is no truth to this. I believe that he's going to be leaving, so I don't think Essendon fans have to be too worried. Maybe there will be coming to light. But at this stage, I think this is a whole lot of crap, and I think this is just Tom Morris reporting, just trying to get into the limelight at the moment. I think that's what I'm saying. Because I think it's very much like throw as much shit at the wall as you possibly can and see what happens. And the thing is, because Zach Merrett isn't playing at the moment, he's not going to come out and say anything. So I think that's like a story right now. Like these players have moved, like they're doing their off-season shit. They're not going to come out in the media now and say anything. So I think the AFL media departments can just come out and say basically anything they want with the barest of evidence and say what they want about these sort of players, because it's not like if you set up something about a Brisbane player, let's say Lachie Neale. The thing is, he would be in the media right now, and Brisbane would feel obligated that they'd have to say something, so they could easily just debunk it and say, no, this isn't true. I think Essendon right now, they are in their off season. There is no way until maybe the trade period comes up, there will be no way this is going to happen, and he's not leaving. The fact he's contracted still as well. Now, obviously, contracts mean fuck all at this point. It's like wiping your ass with toilet paper now with the AFL. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty debunked one. I don't think that's going to happen. I think most people are on the side of Zach Merritt's not leaving. On the other side of it, though, I am actually surprised that this has actually got to this point now that Dusty Martin is considering going to the Gold Coast. I still don't really feel like it's the right option for the Suns. I don't think they really need him. But on the other hand, it does seem like he's going to be going for very little money. Like, they're saying that his contract will probably be around $300,000, which is like, I mean, obviously a lot for everyone. Like, I'd like a $300,000 contract, thank you. But for an AFL footballer of his caliber, that would be pennies. So I still think that, like, people are saying, like, the hunger was gone. Like, you can see the hunger was gone at the Richmond. But that was, I think, because he was in the media all the time. Like, not him talking to them, but he was always in the limelight, like at the Tigers. Like, every single week it was like, oh, Dustin Martin doesn't look like he wants to be there. He doesn't look fit enough. He's injured. He doesn't want to be there. Like, he wasn't even talking to the media, and he was in the story every single week. Up at the Suns, and I mean, this is very much like with Buddy Franklin going to the Swans. He was the most talked about player at the Sydney Swans in a very long time, probably ever. He still could walk down the street and wouldn't be recognised every single minute or getting hounded by random people. And this was going to be the same thing at the Suns. He will be free. He'll be basically a free man. If you were him in Victoria, I don't think he could I don't think he could go down to his local, servo without getting hounded. At least in the Gold Coast, he could. I actually think it's an okay decision if the Suns go and pick him up, because if they can get him for a very cheap point. But he also needs to... I don't think he's going to play... Like, he won't play 24 games. I don't think he's necessarily going to get them to finals unless he can get to a level where he would have to kick at least 30 goals. I think he plays forward. I don't think he plays mid. But I think if he averages 15 touches, averages a goal or a goal and a half a game, I think that's worthy of getting him on the list. And I think he can do that. But does that mean he keeps someone out of the team? I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. I think this has definitely got some truth to it now. I think that it's got to a point where the Suns have offered him a lot, and I think he's talked quite a lot of times. So I do think this has started to get truth, even though at times throughout the year I thought this has been complete bullshit. So I guess I was wrong on that, so I do apologise. But let's take a look at there's a couple of other ones that have requested moves. First one is Isaac Cumming. Obviously, with the Giants going out in straight sets, he's been able to decide his future. He has decided to go to SA, so obviously the Crows or Port Adelaide. My brother, obviously not here today, if you haven't noticed, he has said that he would like to see him at Port Adelaide, especially if they lose the likes of Dan Houston. I think he'd be a pretty decent pickup for the Power. The Crows have obviously got Neil Bullen as one option already that he's already nominated to go to the Crows. So we'll be interested to see if Isaac Cumming decides to go to Port or the Crows. I think he's better suited for Port Adelaide, to be honest. But the Crows obviously can definitely use some defensive help at this stage. I just think the Crows need to build more on their midfield depth, while Port Adelaide, I think their defence needs more structure. So I think that Isaac Cumming's probably better suited for Port, but we'll see how that plays out. And Jack Macrae. So last week, I think it was, we did say that he has nominated to leave the Bulldogs. He's now nominated a club, which is St Kilda. This reeks of St Kilda have so much fucking money that they are like, oh, please, can we get anyone? We're going to chuck the whole bank at Jackson Macrae and hope that he comes to the club. That just reeks of this to me, because why would he want to leave the Bulldogs for St Kilda? There is no need. I mean, he wasn't in the best 22 for the Bulldogs, but he's not. I mean, I guess he's already got his premiership as well. So money is a big deal for him now. He's not winning a premiership at St Kilda anytime soon, at least in his career. I mean, he's got, 2 or 3 years maybe left of his career, and that's if he can even stay in the team. Like, his best footy is, I think, pretty behind him. He's a good accumulator, but that's pretty much it. So I don't know. I think he probably does get a midfield spot for the Saints. Their depth isn't the greatest, so I think it's a good get for the Saints. But I definitely think that this is definitely a war chest kind of we'll throw anything at you, Jack. Can you please just come to the club so we can warrant having this big war chest? I think that's got a huge feeling around that. Just for me, anyway. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. So, before we move into our tips, I wanted to take a look a little bit about the Giants, obviously with their capitulation and the fact of the bye before the finals or before the grand final. So first, let's talk about the Giants, and we'll talk about the finals a little bit later. So looking at it, there's a couple of interesting statistics to come out of the GWS's chokes in the last 2 weeks. Out of the percentage of time that the Giants were in front over those 2 weeks is 94%. That is massive. The fact that they had so much time in front and lost in finals. Like if this happened in round 12 and 13, it'd be news, but no one will give a fuck. I've never seen such a dominance from a team in finals 2 weeks in a row and lose. So it's really bad for the Giants. This is probably the first time really in their history that they have been questioned to this extent, I would say, because they obviously get away with a lot. And I mean, that's not a bad thing. They still are the newest club in the comp, and they've done so much better than the Gold Coast. And I think that's why they get away with a lot, because they've done so much. But this is a real failure, and you have to say it. You have to put it out there. I'm not trying to get clicks or anything. That's just the truth. You can't lead in finals by 94%, and that's across the 2 games. 94% of the time, you have the lead and lose it. You can make a mistake once, like that's against the Swans. Everyone was like, the Giants can go the long way here. They can go and win their first premiership. To do it twice against a team like the Lions, that, don't get me wrong, the Lions are a very quality team, but no one expected them to win this game. So they had to do it. They had to find a way to grit their teeth in the last quarter and just hold on. They should have been able to do it against Sydney a lot more, I would say, because I understand that they probably fatigued a bit more after the Swans game. Like their drop-off in that Lions game was a lot more stark than the Swans game, in my opinion. But I understand the Lions game a lot more of their drop-off, because they put so much effort into that Sydney game that I felt like it was a little bit later in the game against the Lions when they dropped off. Like it was around, I think it was the 20-minute mark of the third quarter when they led by 44 points and they still lost. And they conceded 5 goals in the space of 9 minutes and they were back to within 13. And even then, they still got 2 goals late, the Giants. So I can see like a point of like the Brisbane game. I actually feel like the Swans game was the game they should have won. I mean, obviously they should have won the Lions game. I get it. But they should have been able to hold on with their fitness against the Sydney game, in my opinion. So I actually wasn't I was surprised, obviously, but I wasn't as surprised that the Lions dropped off in that last quarter. Like I did have a thought that the Giants could drop off here. Didn't necessarily think they would lose the game, but I felt like the Lions always were in it to an extent. I don't know if that makes any sort of sense. Maybe I sound like a fuckwit, but that's what I kind of mean by that. Now we'll get into like now that I've mentioned the Giants drop off. It's a pretty big failure of a season. I think next week in the grand final preview podcast, hopefully my brother's here for that. He will be here for the finals this week. We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, we'll be doing a big preview of that. But we'll also be doing we obviously did the gradings for the 10 teams that have already been eliminated. I think we'll do that now as well for the other 6 teams. Their gradings for the season next week as well. But yeah, we'll go talk about the Giants in that. But it's a pretty... I don't know. It's hard to say if it's a failure or not, because I kind of saw them dropping off this year, and the fact that they were premiership favourites to the finals shows how good a team they were this year. But the fact they went out in straight sets is a massive downgrade on their season. But looking at it on the bye, looking at the straight sets exits since 2000, we've seen Port Adelaide in 2001. We took another 6 years after that to West Coast in 2007. Then Fremantle and Geelong both went out in 2014. And then basically ever since then, we've nearly every single year, we have seen a team go out in straight sets. Now, I believe the finals bye came in 2016, because that's when the Bulldogs won their premiership. So 2015, Sydney went out in straight sets. And then since then, we had Hawthorn in 2016, Hawthorn in 2018, Brisbane in 2019, Brisbane in 2021, Melbourne in 2022, Port Adelaide and Melbourne in 2023, and then the Giants this year. So basically, since the finals buyers came in, we have only seen 2017 and 2020, which was the COVID year, not have and as you know, 2020 didn't even have a finals buy, I don't think, because we had the buy in between the prelim and the grand final, I'm pretty sure. So The only time we've actually seen a team not go out in straight sets since the finals bye is 2017. So that if that's the case, it's not really giving a momentum or an advantage to the top 4 teams, is it? Because you're not really I feel like the top 4 teams should be getting a much better advantage, because usually the team in the top 4 usually are going in with the hottest form. Now, you could say the Giants kind of dropped off because they did lose their last 3 games of the season. And I guess that's why some teams feel a little bit nervous trying to rest players. Like the Swans were a bit nervous resting players going into that first final in the last round because they wanted to go in with momentum, while the Giants were happy to rest a couple of players like Daniels and there was another one as well. I was going to say Bedford, but he missed the first final as well, so he didn't necessarily get rested. There was another one. I can't remember who it was. But nonetheless, that's the point I'm trying to bring up here, is I think the finals bye should be moved. Now, I don't mind having a bye around the finals area, but I think to give the top 4 a better advantage, I would say that it should be between the preliminary final and the grand final. I think that is more fair. That also eliminates the idea of a player missing a grand final due to concussion. Because if you get a concussion in the grand final, in your prelim final, you have to have a 12-day break, which means you're eliminated from playing in a grand final, and that is so harsh. Now, on the side of it as well, looking at it, Callum Mills, he may miss the grand final now for the Swans because he did a hamstring in the week of the semi-finals, during training. So he is likely now to miss the grand final. He would play it. He would likely play it if they did have a bye between the prelim and the grand final. I think as well, it's great for to have the Brownlow, and also we could also have the AFL Awards night in that week as well. I think it gets out really nicely. So this is how I would do it. Prelim finals finish on the weekend. You go through. On the Monday, you have the Brownlow that night. So that means every single team can go to the Brownlow. Now, that doesn't mean that the team playing in the grand final can go and have a Brendan Favola kind of night and just get fucking plastered. I'm not saying that. They can sit there and drink the waters. That's fine. But it is kind of crap when you see a team in a state in a grand final who have to stay in a function room. It's kind of crap that they're being separated. Now, granted, I feel like most teams playing in a grand final from interstate don't necessarily care, but I do think for the theatre of the Brownlow, having everyone in the Crown function room is a good look. And when you see 2 Victorian teams in a grand final, I think it's good that every single team is shown in the area. So I think that would be great. And then we could have the awards night on the Thursday night, which also means that the goal of the year and the mark of the year could be nominated then. So maybe minus the grand final, obviously. I think that's... I don't know how they would do that because that mark could be taken at that point. But obviously that's another talking point of the fact that the mark of the year and the goal of the year are decided before the finals. And we obviously know now that Jeremy Cameron's goal and Isaac Heaney's mark probably are the best mark of the year and the best goal of the year. So that's pretty unfortunate. I think that's a good reason to bring it back. The only reason why I think it's good to have a finals bye where it is at the moment is that it gives a chance for the teams in the bottom half of the top 8 to have a chance. And it makes for a better theatre on the side of like anyone can win it. That's the only reason I have it for it right now. But I think at the end of the day, if you are good enough to finish in the top 4, you should have a bigger advantage. Now, at this stage, I am still unsure as to how a team like at the top of the ladder, like the team who finishes first, gets a better advantage than second. Now, this is a bit of an out there sort of take, so don't just take this and go, oh, you're a fucking idiot. Just listen, okay? The only way I could see a way of giving a team, the first team who finishes first, a real advantage over second, because I do think that right now there's no advantage for finishing between first or second right now, and I think you deserve a better one. So the only way I'd be interested to see what you guys have to say, like what you think could give a team who finishes first a better advantage than second. The only way I could see it is, the fact now as well is that we have 18 teams, soon to be 19. Is there a way where we go to 9 teams making finals? Now, the way that happens is, this is how I would do it. I'd be interested to see. We have a wildcard weekend. Oh shit, that sucks. Sorry, wait, okay? We have we have 8, 9, 10, 11 play in a finals round robin, okay? 8, what is it? Yeah, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 8 plays 11th, 9th plays 10th, okay? Those games play, we see who goes through, all right? No, not 8, 9, 10, 11. No, 9, 12, 10, 11, okay? That's what we're going to do, all right? So 9 will obviously play the 12th, and then 10 will play 11, okay? They play each other. Let's say 9 wins and 11 wins, okay? So they will go into another game where they play in 5 days' time, okay? Because this team shouldn't have a huge advantage going into finals. That's the fair point, okay? So that point, then, they play them, all right? So then 9 beats 11th, 9th goes into finals, okay? And then at that point, we have our finals team. So there's 1 to 9, all right? So then I think that's the first final will be top position plays 9th, okay? Plays 9th. And then that means second plays 5th. Yeah, second plays 5th. And, the first weekend, the top team gets a week off, okay? So that means second plays 9th, third plays 8th, fourth plays 7th, and then 5th plays 6th. I think that's right, yeah. I think that we get rid of the... I still think that we get rid of... That's how I would do it personally. It's similar to how the NFL does it. So they don't have second chances or whatever. I think that's the best way to go about it. And the only team that gets a chance is the first team. So they get the real advantage because they deserve it. They finish top of the ladder. And then that's when you go... The lowest ranked team will play top, and then the second lowest ranked team in the next week will play second. And you guys kind of understand at that point the seedings. That's kind of how I would do it. But that's also a huge change. Now, you can have the opinion of that. You don't like that idea. That's fine. I don't like the argument of, we've got to keep to tradition, because the game has been going for 150, 200 years now? No, okay, it's not 200 years. It's gone for over 130, 40 years now, okay? Tradition, who gives a fuck at this point, all right? If you want to play the grand final at night, play it at night. I prefer it in the afternoon, but if you want to do that, do that. If you want to do this sort of stuff, yeah, whatever. At the end of the day, it's been 150 years. We have to innovate eventually. So that's how I'd kind of look at it. I know that's a very weird point. I'd like to, if my brother was here, I'd like him talking about like what his opinion would be on this. But that's kind of how I'd see it now. Like that'd be the way I'd change it. But I don't like the idea of, let's stop Americanizing it or whatever. What's best for the theatre of the game, I think, is what should be at the forefront of it. Who gives a fuck if some 80-year-old wanker who's going to die in 5 years goes, in my day, we didn't used to do that. Who cares, bro? If everyone else is enjoying it and it makes for good theatre, I think that'd be a great idea. Now, you could obviously do another way of maybe 8th to 11th and then 8th, and then there's still 8 teams, but we still have the top team. I still feel like the top team should be playing the lowest ranked team in the first final. I think that's the most fair. And maybe if 8th wins, then that means that then if 8th beats top, then that's like an amazing achievement for them. And you still give the top team a advantage where the fact that you get to play first, you get to play against the lowest ranked team in the finals race. I think there's other ways to look at it than, we can't really change it at the moment because, whatever. Like, there's going to be 19 teams coming in soon. Is it really... Should we really keep with a top 8 format? I think we can change it. And I know we've been talking about this for a while now, but I do think that there is some room for change. But of course, guys, with that being said, let's move on. Let's get to the tips, the breakdown for the massive prelim finals coming up. Swans v Port Adelaide, Friday night. Geelong v Brisbane, Saturday evening. All right, we'll start with Swans versus Port Adelaide. Now, we're going to do it how we did it similar to the last couple of weeks. We're going to be talking about some questions, some matchups, and then we're going to get into the tip. So, Sydney v Port Adelaide will start off first. I think there's a couple of big questions going into this game. The first one, I think the big one is, can the Swans break an 8-year drought against Port Adelaide? If you don't know, the Swans, the last time they beat the Power was 8 years ago, 2016. The last time not the last time the Swans made a grand final, but the last time was 2016. Aliir still played at the Swans. Isaac Heaney was, I think, in his second year or his first year. A lot of huge changes since then. But the Swans have played Port Adelaide once a year since then, haven't beaten them. They've only played Port Adelaide at the SCG once since then. That was the Ollie Florent missed goal that everyone celebrated, including myself, who thought that was going through. Didn't go through. Another talking point as well is Port Adelaide. Can they bring that immense pressure that they brought against the Hawks again? Because obviously against the Cats, they were woeful. They stood up for Ken. They did it against Hawthorn. Can they bring that back? Interesting call. Also, I think this is a pretty big one. Can the Swans get their tall forwards involved? Because I think the first final that they played against the Giants, they were pretty unseen. And of course, I mean, everyone sees the Amati goal, but if you didn't watch the game, Amati was unsighted for 3 quarters. Well, 4 quarters, really. He only had that one moment. But with that goal, he won the game for them. So the likes of Logan McDonald, he's had a pretty poor couple of weeks. Hayden McLean, he's been good when he's played in the ruck at times, but he's also got to start getting in between the arcs and taking contested marks, and that's something that he hasn't been doing at times. So he needs to get more involved in that. The 2 big talking points on the selection front. On the Sydney side, who comes in for Callum Mills? At the moment, it's likely between Fox and Adams. I think that's a pretty safe bet to say. My head and my heart as a Swans fan, I'm sorry to Taylor Adams, but Robbie Fox, I think, has to come in here. I think personally, Fox, he's the one call here. I think he could start as sub, which releases Campbell into the main 22. We obviously saw Braden Campbell had a great qualifying final when he came on as the sub. He was playing with a bit of an injury as well, so I think that he'll be fine with the week off, coming back into the team. And I think that he plays a good role. Robbie Fox offers the sub, but also is a lot more versatile. Fox could play up forward. He could play down back. He could almost play as a tagging role. I wouldn't mind him actually playing on Jason Horne-Francis at times if he came on and had to make that sort of play. So I think Fox has a lot more versatility. The only way I see Taylor Adams coming into the team is if the likes of maybe a Justin McInerney takes the subs vest, because I can't see Taylor Adams doing that. I don't think that's a good call at all. The one thing that Taylor Adams does have on his side is the fact that he has had some pretty good performances in finals before. He's a very older body, so I think I can help him as well in a team that Sydney, their midfielders, other than maybe James Rowbottom, they're not really tough midfielders, and in big finals, that's obviously a real weapon to have. We obviously saw a couple of years ago with the Cats up against Sydney in that grand final. The main reason why the Cats dominated early and then eventually dominated the whole game was the bigger body midfielders of the Cats, like Selwood, Dangerfield, Guthrie. They just outmuscled all the Sydney midfielders. So that is the one reason why Taylor Adams would come in. I think for the prelim, though, for the versatility, I would personally pick Robbie Fox. Now, the only other one I could see potentially coming in is Caden Cleary, but I feel like after that first final, I don't think he's going to come in now, which is a little bit unfortunate for the young guy, but I'm sure he'll get more opportunities going forward. Now, on the selection side for Port Adelaide, I think there's only one here. I think it is, with Todd Marshall going out, does Dixon come straight back in? Because Dixon was obviously a laid out in the semi-final against Hawthorn. He had a very poor qualifying final, but so did most Port Adelaide players, let's be honest. So Marshall did come in, went out with concussion. Dixon, does he come back in? He doesn't have a lot of form behind him. The reason why I actually think Dixon should be a straight swap for him, and I don't know what my brother thinks about this, but I think he should come straight back in because Sydney's tall defenders are quite short. McCartan obviously is the tallest, but Melican and Rampy, if the other two options here, I think Port Adelaide should try and stretch them. Sydney have had troubles in the past against big, muscly forwards. Think of Tom Hawkins. Jesse Hogan even last week had some good moments. He just kind of tapered off in the second half. But I think that Dixon comes in, and I think he has a real big impact here. So I'm actually saying that Port Adelaide should bring Dixon in and then straight for Marshall. Now, the only other option is probably a small forward, maybe a McEntee. But I just feel like Port Adelaide should really try and stretch the Swans, in my opinion. Now, looking at a couple of matchups through this game, Jordan is obviously the tagger for the Swans. I think he probably goes to Zach Butters. I think that's the best call here. I don't even know who he went to when Sydney last played them. Obviously, if you don't know, the Swans got smashed by 112 points against Port Adelaide. That game, it's kind of a blur at this point. I don't really remember most about it, or even where James Jordan even played in that game. I know he played, but I don't even know who he tagged. I think he goes to Zach Butters here and tries to take him down. In my opinion, looking at Jason Horne-Francis, one of the more important players for Port, I think James Rowbottom takes him at the stoppage, and then I think when he goes up forward, Rampy will take him. I think that's the best call. Looking at on Port Adelaide's side, I think Willem Drew likely goes to Isaac Heaney. Heaney, if that is the case, there is some times this year where Isaac Heaney has been tagged at stoppage and has been shut out of games. And I think what the Swans learned from those sort of stuff throughout the year is to chuck Heaney forward. And I think that's what really worked against the Giants. He was kind of not struggling, but he didn't have a very good first 2 quarters against GWS. Tom Green at the stoppage kind of had him. And what he did was he started to get forward. And Isaac Heaney is such a hard matchup to go on. And I really don't think Port Adelaide have the matchup for Isaac Heaney if he goes forward. You would think Aaliyah, Zerk Thatcher. I just think that Heaney's too crafty for them, especially if the ball hits the ground. So I really don't see a option for it. Probably a Miles Bergman would be my best bet. But even then, if the Swans have McLean, Amati, and then also McDonald, those 3 are already going to be taken. So that means at that point that maybe a Logan Evans would have to stand next to him. And I don't think Logan Evans could take a Heaney. I don't think that's really going to work. So that's where I would see it on that sort of front. If Heaney does get held up by Drew, he has to get forward. Now, Georgiades, I think he's the most damaging Port Adelaide tall forward for the whole year. I think Melican gets this job. I think that Melican can meet him in the one-on-ones. I think he'll have him. I think he's a little bit quicker than McCartan, so I think that's where that's going to be better held there. That's where I'm kind of looking for it. And I actually think the ruck battle here is brilliant too. Jordan Sweet, what a game he had against Hawthorn last week against Lloyd Meek. Now, Meek played really well as well, but Jordan Sweet, what a couple of months he's had. He was basically at the start of the year, he was with Ivan Soldo trying to get for that battle. And now he's jumped over Ivan Soldo. And then Vizentini's done that too. And Jordan Sweet has been a revelation for Port Adelaide the last couple of weeks, especially when they've hit their form. So I think this is a massive matchup. He's got to go up against the big Brodie Grundy, who's had a week off as well. This is going to be a great matchup. But what I think the most important matchup is, probably something that a lot of people wouldn't have thought about, is I think Rioli's matchup. He had a massive game against Hawthorn last week, was close to getting votes in this game for me, for the Boundary Riders finals votes. I think Cunningham will take this job. He's done really well on small forwards this year. I think he's been very underrated, Harry Cunningham. Obviously took Brett Daniels in that first final, kept him silent. And Cunningham will take Rioli in this game. Now, Port Adelaide have struggled at times to find goals through their small forwards. I think Cunningham takes the most dangerous here, has to take Rioli out of this game somehow. And I think that he did really well last week, Rioli, against Hawthorn. He had Blake Hardwick, who's another really good small defender, and he did really well. He had 15 touches, about 8 score involvements, kicked 2 goals, Rioli. He was brilliant. One of the big reasons why Port Adelaide won that game, and it was really good with his pressure. So that's where I'm kind of thinking with Cunningham going to him. But let's get to the tips. My brother, he has gone Sydney. I have gone Sydney as well. Now, he's gone by 27 points for the Swans. I think this is going to be a very close game. I'm not tipping him that high. I think Port Adelaide will play really well here. I think this is going to be a great game. I don't see this being a walkover for Sydney. I don't even think it's going to be a walkover for Port Adelaide, even though they've had a very good record over the Swans. The reason why I think Sydney are going to win this game is because I think with the week off, they had a really good rest after that Giants game. I think Port Adelaide had a tough game against Hawthorn last week. I think that's why they were so good to come off that game against Geelong, because they did not perform well against Geelong. It was basically a training drill for the Geelong in that second half. So I think Port Adelaide, it was a lot easier for them to respond, because similar to looking at it like the Giants and how they responded against Brisbane, they were there for 3 quarters, but because they put so much effort into that qualifying final, they tired in that last quarter, and it was that gave the Lions the license to then get back into the game. Port Adelaide, I think, had a lot more energy in them for that Hawthorn game. It was a tough game against Hawthorn, though. Can they back it up? I think players like McInerney for the Swans had a really poor qualifying final. He is so important to Sydney. If you guys don't remember at the start of the year, he was amazing for the Swans as that wingman, half forward. So he brings that lot of pressure. He's a real barometer for the Swans. He was the one who was subbed out. So he may actually start as the sub this week. I don't know if he will, but McInerney, I think, is a real big... I think that's a real good thing that he got another rest. Braden Campbell as well, obviously of the injury. I think Sydney definitely will be okay with the week off. And the one thing, like I said, is can the Power back this up 2 weeks in a row? Having a tough game. They're going to have a tough game against Sydney. Sydney, that was a real... Look, I don't want to say it was a real mulligan, that game against the Power earlier in the year, a couple of months ago. But I can't see Sydney coming out and playing that poorly again. The one thing me and my brother have said, obviously he's a Port fan, I'm Sydney. At the very least, one of us will be in the grand final. That's a good sign. I don't know how we would react if we were both in it. But anyway, let's move on. Talk about Geelong versus Brisbane. Massive game between these two sides. Interestingly enough, Geelong went in as heavy underdogs against the Power. They're in the prelim. Brisbane Lions went in as heavy underdogs against the Giants. They're into the prelim. So both of these teams probably weren't expected to be at this point, probably playing against each other. I don't think many people would have seen this coming. But questions talking about this game. First of all, do the Cats recall Guthrie and Hawkins? It doesn't look like they will, so it looks like they're going to go with a lot more of a younger lineup. The Cats' ruck call is a very interesting one. Who do they pick out of Stanley or De Koning? Now, De Koning was an emergency against Port Adelaide, while Stanley played in that game and played pretty well. But again, it was against Port, very poor game. I would honestly go with De Koning. I think he's a lot more versatile. But Stanley, they may go with a little bit of experience. On the Lions side, do the Lions have an answer for Tom Stewart? I think that's a very interesting one. I think maybe a Kai Lohman goes and plays on him as that sort of sign. I think that may be the option. The Lions, they need to find another avenue to goal, because I feel like the main reason why they got into that game against the Giants wasn't really a lot of structure and a lot of skill. It was the fact that they put this game into chaos. And that may be a way they can beat Geelong, because they put this game into chaos. They got the ball moving. The one problem the Lions were having as well was the fact that they continued to bomb long. They can't do that against the Cats, because if they bomb long against the Cats, they are going to be losing this by 40, 50 points. They need to find short little lead-ups, one-on-ones. That's the way they're going to beat the Cats. That's a big talking point on this game for the Lions. And looking at the matchups in this game, Harris Andrews, I think he has to go to Jeremy Cameron. They were very lucky last week that Jackson Payne didn't cost them this one against Jesse Hogan, because Hogan was massive and almost took this game away from the Lions. I think they have to go with Harris Andrews on him and just hope for the best. At this point, maybe bring in another taller defender, whether it is Dara Joyce, and then play Jackson Payne as well. They have to shut down Jeremy Cameron here. If he kicks 4 or 5+ goals, they won't get away with it, because the Giants let them off the hook. They won't get that lucky 2 weeks in a row. I think this is a massive matchup. Probably the most important one is Starskovich up against Stengel. I think that Stengel's probably the most traditional small forward. I don't think he won't like playing against Brian Myers or Brad Close, Starskovich. I think Stengel plays closest to goal, so I think Starskovich takes that role. He was brilliant against Toby Green last week, so I think he takes that role as well. I think this is a very interesting one, because obviously small forwards are very prominent to kicking goals in finals, a lot more than taller forwards. So I think this is probably the most important matchup of this game. If Starskovich can keep Stengel quiet, I think it will go a long way to the Lions potentially causing an upset. If Stengel gets off the hook, kicks 3 or 4 goals, Geelong will be in the granny. Another one as well, this one in the midfield, Dunkley up against Dangerfield at stoppage. I think that's pretty fair enough. Both of them will run off it. I think it's a very interesting game for Dunkley, though. I think he might have to be a pretty close checker on Dangerfield, because if Dangerfield plays well here, I think the Cats pretty much go on to the grand final. I think the main way to beat the Cats is to stop Dangerfield in big finals. So we'll see how that goes. Do the Cats have to find an answer for Zorko? Because last week against the Giants, they had James Peatling. Peatling did a really good job on Zorko in the first half. But then Zorko started to get into the game, and when he did, the Lions got right back into it. So I think the Cats' best way to stop Dane Zorko is to chuck a dangerous small forward on him. My best option here is Brad Close. I think that's the best way to stop it. Or maybe chuck Ollie Dempsey onto him. You either give him Ollie Dempsey and you give him a fast runner, and because Zorko won't keep up with the pace, or you give him Brad Close, because Brad Close is easier to kick goals. But I don't know if that will be the option, though, because I feel like a Ryan Lester will go to him. So maybe a Brian Myers as well. I feel like that's your option there for Geelong. And on the other side, how do the Lions have to stop Max Holmes? Because he was brilliant against Port Adelaide. They chucked him through the guts. They didn't really keep him on that wing. He played brilliantly. He brought that extra vein of pace that the Cats have desperately needed for a long time. So Max Holmes is also hungry. He missed out on the grand final in 2022, so he'll be hungry to get back onto that grand final stage and hopefully doesn't pull a hamstring again. I'm really unsure as the Lions have a matchup for him here, because if you look at their midfield, the only one I can think of is Will Ashcroft, and obviously Will Ashcroft won't tag you, I'm not saying that, but have him as like a play at stoppage and then run off him, because Ashcroft is the one change of pace in that midfield core. You think of McCluggage, he's probably that faster one, but I still think he's a lot more in the guts, maybe more wing, but that Dunkley obviously in the guts, Neal's in the guts, he's not going to defend. So I think, and I'm not saying Will Ashcroft has to defend here, but we saw how good he was against the Giants. He changed the game. So if he plays on Max Holmes, keeps him accountable at times, Will Ashcroft, I think that's the only matchup at stoppage that could get the Cats thinking twice about it, because he had free reign against the power, Max Holmes. So that's the only other matchup I think is going to be looked at. But I think this is the game that could be a bit of a blowout. This is unfortunate. I'm sorry to the Lions fans. I'm picking the Cats. I think they're going to win this one pretty comfortably. I can't see a world where they have any sort of chance here, the Lions. My brother's actually said the Cats could win this by it will only win this one by 16 points. So he's thinking this one's going to be closer than the other game. I think the Cats are going to win this one pretty comfortably. Now, I think the best way to beat the Cats is through chaos and speed. And I just don't think the Lions are known for that. They're a lot more for their methodical football, short kicking, getting it up the field, and then poking through and then bombing long and then hoping for the best. The Lions, just the last couple of weeks, they had a really easy game against Carlton, obviously, and they look brilliant. But I don't see a world where the Cats, they are one of the best structured teams in the comp, one of the best coach teams in the comp. I can't see a world where the Lions can pick through them the way they did against the Giants in that second half. So that's where I'm kind of looking at it as well. The only way I can see the Lions winning this one as well is keeping the Cats small forwards under wraps. I can't see a world where that happens. I think I feel like they have Ryan Lester and Starskovic, but the Cats have 3 or even 4 smaller forwards that can get off the chain here. That's where I'm kind of looking at that. If they can shut down Stengel, they can shut down maybe one more like a Brad Close. Then they've got Myers, they've got Ollie Dempsey. I just think the Cats have too many avenues to goal here. But looking at it, that's where I'm seeing it. Both me and my brother are picking Sydney Geelong Grand Final for 2024. That's our tips for this one. Make sure to let us know down below who you think is going to be making the Grand Final this year. But that's basically all we have for this episode of the podcast, episode 81. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you did watch this over on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe because we're so close to 2,000 subs. I think we've got to 5 or 6 years. So I know there's 5 or 6 years who aren't subscribed. So how about you lift your finger up, put it on if you're watching on your phone, find the little subscribe button and just click it. Just do it for me, all right? Just do it once for me, please, all right? And if you're over on Spotify, we keep on growing over on Spotify, so I really do appreciate it. I'll be interested to see how low the numbers get towards the off-season, because we do actually do the podcast through the off-season. We talk about other sports like soccer, the Premier League, and NFL as well. So we'll see how that drops off, but if you guys do enjoy it, make sure to listen throughout the off-season. But if you're over on Spotify right now, guys, make sure to leave us 5 stars so we keep on growing, and I keep on asking really nicely, but none of you keep on doing it. So maybe I'll start abusing you and see if you start clicking that 5-star rating. But anyway, click 5 stars because I asked nicely, guys. And also make sure to follow so you're notified on the review and the podcast every single week. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next week.